Hello everybody. I'm Tracy Powell, and I'm the founder. Okay, we'll stand together. So I'm Tracy Powell. I'm the founder of All Digital Topics, and we focus on media and its impact and interactions with customers. I'm also a fellow at Stanford in the 9th program this year, so I've taken some quasi-read from my site to focus on the overall strategy of how to help these organizations engage with diverse audiences.
I'm Suzanne McBride. I'm a board member of Lion, and for the last 5.5 years, I've operated a website on the west side of Chicago called Austin Talks. It's about a 90% African American population. It's actually 100,000 people live in this neighborhood, and they get virtually no coverage aside from our website, and then a weekly newspaper every week. So I've been pursuing for a long time in terms of how communities of color across the country can cover, particularly in larger metropolitan areas where there's a history of the legacy media outlets, partially positive way to put it, PC way, only partially covering communities and often covering them in very racist, segregated ways. Sorry, what's your website called? It's called Austin Talks. Austin, like the town Austin, Texas, but it's here in Chicago. It's the neighborhood. Yeah. We're often Austin, Texas.
East Austin, Texas,
and is that an order of what?
So the first thing we want to just let you know, we have a couple of people who are tweeting, and so I'm going to be the story, so you can record it. So that since this is such a small group, we kind of want to find out who's in the room. So if you could kind of introduce yourself and say you want to make this conversational.
I'll go first then. Career professor. Michael Brown Noser. I'm Simon Galbraith. I co-founded Rutgers, a paper local at Rutgers University in Brunswick, New Jersey. I'm also a graduate student at Rutgers University studying visual media. I'm one of the folks recording the conversation for my digital journalism class, where I'm covering hyperlocal as a beat. And then I'm involved in a couple of social justice reporting projects. So that's, I guess, primarily why I'm here, because I'm really interested in finding out how we can give underserved communities the tools to make their own media, and as media makers, make sure that we're representative of the entire community which we serve, not just the businesses that give us a pass.
My name is Joe Anditas. I'm the coordinator of the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. I work under Debbie Gallant, who is the associate director. And my job is to help local and independent publishers do their jobs better and do it, more in line with the tenets of what we assume to be good journalism. So, make money.
My name is Eric Ortiz. I'm a founder and CEO of Everybit. It's a live mobile storytelling tool. It's an easy to tell a story on your phone using any type of media, audio, video, photo, text, and drawing. Our mission is to make all voices heard. We want to empower anyone to be able to tell their own story. So the side project we're working on is intended to create community-powered movement in underserved communities. To give people tools and training to become their own movement, so they can tell stories of their community.
I just started a news website called Delaware Currents. The idea is to cover the Delaware River. And really what I'm looking for is one of the communities that has been badly served in the environmental universe is always rural communities. They are often left very much at the tail end of communication. And much of the southern end of the Delaware has been heavily industrialized, and many of those communities are suffering industrial blight. So it's how to tap into that. Thinking about
Is that your website?
Delaware Currents. Sorry, it's Meg McGuire.
Hi, I'm Katie Hopkins-Gar. I'm the Digital Innovation Faculty at the Institute. And I'm taking over the O&A Pointer Leadership Academy for Women in Digital Media, which is a big priority on diversity there, and that's where I'm based. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Liz Fuller. I'm the co-publisher, I guess, of the Largemont Buzz in Los Angeles, California. And we're right in the middle of the city of LA, covering a number of neighborhoods, which include some of the wealthiest single-family neighborhoods in the city, but which also bump up against many lower-income multifamily neighborhoods, and sort of spreading outwards, increasingly lower-income and underserved communities. And I think the site overall is going to be much stronger when you on this. We don't just focus on the wealthy communities that we always know about and the reality was, but we also want to focus on the communities that have not so good.
Oh, we're doing the driving here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't really. So,
I know what you mean.
Right, I know what I'm saying. So, I'm going to in North Carolina Health News. So, in some senses, it's almost obvious why we would want to cover underserved communities, minority communities. We cover the entire state. You have what people don't understand about North Carolina is that if you cut off North Carolina at income, which you understand, and lay that everything piece of that into its own separate state, you could have health outcomes, income, etc., that have worse outcomes than Mississippi. So we have a very multi-layered state in terms of income and outcomes. Income outcomes, we have the highest per capita number of outhouses per capita in the country, still in North Carolina. So there's some really intense health disparities among populations of color in North Carolina. There's some pretty intense environmental justice issues, particularly in the eastern part of the state. We have income disparities. So it's by race in the eastern part of the state, it's by income in the western Annapolis part of the state. So we actually have money to cover rural health care. We've got from a state-based foundation. So we're covering rural health care. But I desperately want to begin speaking more and hearing more from the minority community in North Carolina. It's a quarter of the state population. It's huge. And it's healthcare stuff. So.
I love that the worst thing to say is
I have a girlfriend who used to work for the public health department in the state of Louisiana, and she said that their motto was "Thank God for Mississippi."
So, I'm the manager of the new executive director of the line. So my interest in the topic is
Matt, wait. Start over.
One is that I think that the indie online news model is in such an incredible position to serve indies that never, and may never be part of the business model of this media. Never got attention. Yet my other interest is the work that we've been doing and put a ton of focus on this reporting over the past few years. And we ended up winning the Thought Leader Award last year for very, very modest success, which showed us how bad the whole industry was, that we were doing this, thing just because we tried a little bit.
My name is Brian Wheeler. I'm Executive Director of Charleston tomorrow. We started covering public education 2 or 3 years ago. And I saw that as an opportunity for us to cover more diverse audiences in our community. So we're tackling that through looking at achievement gap related stuff, and also looking at redevelopment of public housing. It's a big issue. So we're trying to insert ourselves in the immediate source of those issues. At the same time, I'm at a disadvantage, and I'm not a minority. I don't have any minorities on my staff, nor do I have any on my board. So I'm working, with that recognition that I don't have adequate. My board and staff don't reflect the diversity in the community, but yet we're still trying to do the best we can.
One is like, let me just put it on one is how many people are in this room and the other rooms. But the advertising is a challenge. And then another is someone tweeted something today saying, where's the people of color in your program? Where are the people of color on your board? And so, well, we have some, but not enough for sure. And I just want to throw those things out there. Two people speak meta about it and talk about it.
Yeah.
So, where do we start? I was at ONA last week, and I did a demo book, Black Twitter and the problem was that one wasn't very diverse. We were one of the larger ones, and again, we were talking amongst each other. And the people that we really weren't, and that was acknowledged on the stage. So it was really important for me to be here because finally I'm having this stuff that I'm learning about. Now, as a founder, I understand the challenges. You're working by yourself or closest by yourself. You don't have the money or the resources or the time, quite frankly, to go out and try to find a mentor, folks to come on and extend your coverage. But I'm here today that it is imperative. For the years, the mainstream media outlets in your community aren't. So this is an opportunity for you to do exactly what they're not. One of the common questions I get is, where do we find people to work in our newsroom? Where do we find people who, the conversations that are happening online where people are talking about these important issues and topics? So I want to start here, and again, I don't want to do all the talking. I want folks to talk to me, because I need to understand too what you're doing. So the very first place, I guess, I'm going to start is how do you talk to those communities? How do you use language and that? I mean, that was one of the questions I heard from up here, right? So earlier, David and I had a really good conversation, and I know everything is a little longer in existence, but one of the things he said that is so important is that the people who miss his coverage the most are African Americans. Not only did David go out into the communities and cover these folks, but he also invited them to tell their own stories. One of the things that I'm noticing that the mainstream media outlets that are trying to cover Black Lives Matter and all of this, they are not writing for those communities, Black and brown communities. They're trying to explain those communities to their white fans. And that, whether people know it or not, you can turn off. They're not exactly inviting anybody, maybe not to another who are talking to the same people you always talk to. And so I would like to ask you all, how do you, when you do cover these issues, when you, for example, when you go on Black Lives Matter, how do you cover it? How do you make sure it's inclusive when you're writing about these issues?
Well, actually, there are almost two different issues there. Our website started almost 6 years ago because I and several of my students and the people who live right near this neighborhood, I grew up in, and also neighborhood next to it, were really concerned about lots of misperceptions about Black people and Black people. And I was very conscious of the fact that I'm a white woman from well-to-do neighborhood right next to this neighborhood, which actually has a very rich history, more middle class. last African-American community, people realize there's a huge amount of displacement in that, but I'm actually concerned with this. I would think very definitely buckled into this community. But I had to confront something right away about it. I cannot tell certain stories, right? Because I'm a white woman, I do not have those experiences. And so that has been actually a very painful thing for me because, you know, as a journalist, you want to think, oh, I can go in and tell you, no, you can't. We all have these life histories. I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but really what's more important is to make sure that you're opening the window for all people to tell stories, particularly in these neighborhoods. And so I've had to step back many times, you know, I'm the publisher of the site, and have other people actually go out and tell the stories, that kind of thing. I actually have a publisher, a white publisher in the area who for many years said that there was only the one white person in Austin, and it was him, not me. So it was really interesting what happened and how much race is a part of everything. And so I think really just being asked, like, I really appreciate Brian's comments because we need to say that stuff, you know, like that's what it is. It's not saying that I can't have a voice in it and I shouldn't care about it. And honestly, I think we white people, it's long overdue for us to step up and give voices to everyone else because we do have privilege. Right? I have privilege as a woman, I have privilege. In some ways, everyone becomes a woman, in some ways, I think I don't. I definitely have privilege as a white person. So we spent a lot of time on the website talking about that. And at some point, I'm not sure how soon, I was hoping it would happen by now, I actually want to hand it off to a group of residents. But as all of us know with the issue of sustainability, you have to be really careful about doing that because the last thing I want to do is hand it off and not have it survive. But I think that the race and who gets to tell these stories is critically important.
Can I add something from, again, a blonde, or as in San Antonio they call it güera, who lives in a majority, I'm a minority, in a majority city. It's 57% Hispanic and 8% African American. When Black Lives Matter happened in San Antonio, I realized that not only can't I cover it, but it would not be appropriate for me to cover it through my lens, and it would be much better to help and empower the community to cover it themselves. And so throughout the whole process, because the folks active in Black Lives Matter have been very active on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, I've used Storify to pull in all of their coverage of the event, and through that process gotten such an incredible multi-dimensional picture of what happened that it was far better than any of the coverage that anybody else did, even any single individual, because it has video from 3 different angles of somebody being arrested. It has, you know, all of it in real time. And so my voice is not in there except to pull everybody else's voice.
So I've heard two really good techniques so far. We kind of overcome the challenges of not having the resources to do it in-house. So we said we bring in people from the community to write and tell their own stories. They don't necessarily have to write. I mean, audio and videos are spectacular and a lot more compelling. And you did Storify, so you used digital tools to bring in new voices. So those are 2 tools that I think about constantly. And I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No.
So I think the terminology, you're saying you can't cover it or you can't comment on it from your perspective. Because it sounds like you're covering it. You're just making sure you don't try to inject your own biases and your own narratives into how you think it plays out in the African American.
Sometimes you have to be very careful about who actually is going out to cover things. I'm not saying as a white person I can't care about these issues and be involved in the coverage.
You can report what happens, right? But you really want to be careful to not impose something on it that would come from your background that lacks experience. Right?
This is from me, not even with your incredible experience. You put 3 or 4 different people in a situation, especially of tension, their whole backstory is involved in reporting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even though you know that, it's really good for your readers and viewers to know that one of those people is speaking from their perspective. So although the website can cover these things, you might be careful about who culturally represents certain parts of the community in that coverage. So that there is actually a person who understands what that community might be feeling as they report it.
But I also think, too, like the example this happened earlier in the week, there was a high-speed chase on the west side involving a homicide suspect. And about 30-some police vehicles, I saw 20 of them go by me, ended up in Austin. I just happened to be coming home because I parked my car in that neighborhood every day, saw what was happening, walked down. I was probably the only white person, I think it was one reporter who was already there, the two of us, and then everyone else African American watching this, trying to get out of the police way, and virtually all the officers and detectives are all white. So the information I got that day, and the information that one of my students who happens to be African American and live in that neighborhood got, was somewhat different, and then the experiences we had, right? Just the privilege and authority I already had, like that cop was going to talk to me because I'm white, and I looked like I knew what I was doing. I had a certain amount of authority, whereas my black student had a very different reaction. Now, we've actually talked about how to write about that. That's separate from actually presenting the news, and I come from a very traditional news background, and so I've actually had this debate with a few of my colleagues across the country about, well, why didn't you put that in the story? Because that is a form of storytelling that, you know, people need to know, like, what the differences were. So it's even some things like as simple as that. But no, it's a long answer to, I think everyone should be covering this, but I think having a lot of people in different ways contribute to that coverage is really critical.
Right,
And I think the social media component, especially for people who aren't journalists, I rely a lot on people who aren't journalists in terms of story tips, going to community meetings, and trying to give them voices, even as simply as, hey, they did 30 minutes of audio, or they called and left me something that I transcribed.
Okay, so then the point I think I'm hearing here is that context matters,
Oh,
and that we miss nuance when we don't have perspectives, plural, in our coverage. And so maybe I skipped a point in our conversation, but we should have started there instead of starting with how we get to that context.
Okay.
Just to put you in perspective.
So, your comment about writing through the like explaining the Black Panther's movement to white is interesting. So pre-capital letters Black Nazis, we ran a story, I want to say it was 1 week after the San Diego shooting. We had 100 journalists on that story who were thinking about it. We ran a story, and we never would have written it before this made in 22. We never would have written it if we hadn't diversified our staff. Because we started doing stories, we never would have, the right way, we would have gotten before. And we tried to let those stories be written. You know what I'm saying? And so we wrote a story about how some activists in New Haven were criticizing the media coverage of San Diego, saying it's horrible that 20 kids died, but 20 kids died in the last didn't have our own lines, and we know why the San Diego's news will apply. What about covering the violence in the city? And I think we had 700 comments on that story, and people threatening to burn down the building, and the reaction from white readers was insane. And it was in part because I think we wrote out that whole, we weren't writing just roll out ideas,
So part of what we're seeing right now, especially with Black Lives Matter and all the activity that you're seeing on Twitter, is that you're seeing finally the combination of people who have not had voices in the past. They have voices now, and those voices are rising up to the top. So there's a reaction to that now. We're formerly powerless people now have some semblance of power, and they're exercising it, they're using it, and quite frankly, that angers and scares some people. And what you find on Black Twitter is they don't care. They're going to continue to raise these issues, and that's a good thing, because we have so many people in journalism organizations raising the issues, so, or raising them in a frame that represents what Black Lives Matter is talking about and what they're about.
I have a question about structure. So obviously bringing people of color into the newsroom to diversify the context from which we deliver the news is very important. I'm just wondering does bringing Black people of color into the newsroom, will that actively change the structure? Will that contribute to actively changing the structures that oppress them?
So I am of the opinion that it's not about race, and I want to let me finish my thought and I'll come back to this.
Yeah.
It's not just about race. I mean, what I'm seeing more so in the newsroom is there's a huge divide in terms of class.
Yeah, income.
And,
Income, right.
and so you can have a black reporter in your newsroom.
Right.
Preferably you have more than one black reporter, but you have black reporters in your newsroom. And they can still write a story that totally misrepresents what's really happening.
Right.
In the New York Times, for example, there was a black reporter who wrote a piece about the Ferguson shooting and said, Michael Brown was unusual. That was a black writer. And, he caught hell from black folks for even writing that. The cop that killed him was no angel either, but we didn't see that written by the police officer. So, I'm not saying you have to have
Right.
black reporters
So,
covering black.
Exchange my comment about bringing people of color to the newsroom to bring people of low income into the newsroom, right? Low income classes into the newsroom. Will they just begin to feed into the beast that is the media, or will that be an active process of changing the structures that make low income people low?
I'm more in favor of changing the structure, and actually, if you have white reporters in the newsroom, make sure your white reporters are out there covering all the communities, the whole community.
Right.
I mean, not just talking to the cops, but out there talking to the
Right.
communities impacted by police actions. And we don't have, that's the structural change that needs to happen. So, yeah, I don't want to stand here and put out that impression. I'm not saying that we just need black reporters writing on black.
I know.
That's
So just like we used to have women could only write about women's issues for the women's page, that's wrong too. But I do think what's happening too often in many newsrooms, because I stay in touch with a lot of folks across the country working in traditional news settings, is that we actually have fewer minority reporters now than we did 10 years ago. A lot of it has to do with recession. So, the latest studies we've seen, it's going to be like 50, 60 years. And that's assuming a pretty big, increase every year in minority hiring. So what I think it really comes down to is people actually being really honest in a newsroom about how they're covering things and not very easily saying, oh, you're a black person, so you're going to cover that. And I remember when I was in Minneapolis years ago, we had an African-American photographer, and he would get sent out to certain things that other white photographers weren't. And I remember one time there were a line on riot, and I was being sent as a reporter, and he was being sent as a photographer. And he and I collectively went and said, no, it's not safe. Neither one of us is going. And I worry about what would have happened if only Inclusive had said it. If only he had said it. Now, when there was a white woman and a black man together saying, we don't think this is safe, then people said, okay, we're not going to send you. But if he had said it, what would have happened if I had just said it? If he had gone and I would have been kept safely back. So I think it's really as simple as sending people out and then talking to people in the community. We just don't have conversations. I think so often as reporters, we're doing things very quickly, more quickly than ever before. We don't take the time to do the single most important thing, which is actually talk to people on the ground, everyday people, about whatever that issue is, right? Like, I should have been spending more time talking to all the people staying around watching the end of this police chase than I did talking to my cop, right? He's going to tell me the 2 bits of official stuff, but what would have been more valuable for me is to spend that 15 minutes rather than chatting with him, talking to these 3 people who could tell me about, oh, I'm upset because the grocery store up the street closed, or I'm upset because I've been trying to get this bus schedule changed and they won't listen to me downtown. Like, that's the stuff that day in and day out we need to have those conversations. Whether that person's black or white, poor or not, those stories are the ones that, it's just good lead reporting is what it is.
It sounds like what you're saying. It sounds like what you're saying is punch up essentially, and because what we're saying is just stop gravitating towards the sources of power and the official narratives so easily because it's the easy story or the easy quote. And regardless of the color of a person's skin or the money in their bank account, you look at who has the power and then you challenge the structures of power and get your narratives in that direction rather than gravitating towards that.
Ferguson's a really good example of that. There have been great stories post-Ferguson about all the zillions, I think they had that many, of tickets that people were getting, how many warrants they had for tickets, and people going to jail because they had like a speeding ticket. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, that was a systematic problem that apparently is now slowly being fixed. But that's the kind of story that I was a reporter in that community. Shame on me if I hadn't been able to figure that story out before Ferguson. So all these things are coming out afterward, like just basic reporting, going in and talking. Like, the numbers I've seen, it's like hundreds of thousands of tickets. I mean, not that many people live in Ferguson. So it's like one of these things where it's like, and it happened to be black people who were largely affected. It happened to be mostly poor people But that's the kind of stuff that we're on the ground just reporting and being comfortable going into environments that people don't look exactly like you. You probably got that story.
So we talked about bringing in voices through digital technology. Story 5 was an example. We talked about bringing voices inside to tell the stories. I have maybe one other suggestion. And this is something mainstream media has not done that independent media can do. How about partnering with some of the other independent media in your communities? I mean, there are tons of Black and Latino, small, struggling organizations across this country, and they need help telling stories. They need the resources for somebody going out there to help them tell stories, they need content, and vice versa. One of the things that I was troubled by initially was something that the Huffman posted. They did a crowdfunding campaign to raise money to hire a reporter to cover Ferguson. That's fine. Then all of a sudden they changed up and they sent that reporter to the Black newspaper, the St. Louis Afro-American, St. Louis American, so she could write for the St. Louis American. It's like, well, that wasn't the deal when people gave to the crowdfunding campaign, but it helped them to expand, the St. Louis American expand their coverage. But what I would have liked to have seen was some of that, what she was writing for the St. Louis American would be to appear in the Huffman Post. But, I mean, is that possible in your communities?
I was going to ask how would you see this? Have you seen, besides that, what different partnerships and how they would work? Or do you think it's mostly they want their voice amplified and better distribution? Is there a revenue thing? That's awesome relationship.
I think a lot of times people just haven't simply asked or thought to do it.
Just sat down.
I've had a 5-year plus relationship with Gossip News, which is a weekly newspaper in my community. I did it very practically for 2 reasons. One, they already knew the community. 2, I knew the African American editor, and I thought, hey, more power if we can work together than apart. And it was a print publication, and I was going to be digital only. And I know that we reminded me of the figures earlier today, 25% of poor people don't have any access to the internet, 20% of African Americans don't have any direct internet access. So I was looking for ways to partner that way. Now, that's one thing, right? That's a newspaper that's already in that area, largely covering the 90% African American population. What I think would be more interesting is if I partnered with the Chicago Tribune or the Sun-Times. And Sun-Times actually in the last year or so did approach me at one point, and they were interested in it. And part of me was like, that's great. Why do you think they're interested in it? Going back to the question about revenue. We have virtually no people on our newsroom, right? So they look at my website, oh my God, that's free content. Now, you know what? A part of me is somewhat offended by that. Another part of me, a greater part of me, isn't offended at all. Great. Because that can get my stories out even more, and then that readership, which isn't picking up the Austin News or seeing Austin Talks, can see a richer, more diverse way of life in this community that people don't understand or think about, then that's good.
It's like 62% of the local newspapers.
I was just saying,
Right, it's just what you've been
partnerships
doing.
can also be with the big players. That's what we're doing. So, you know, what I try to get our staff thinking about is, and a civil rights leader in town talking this, be color aware, not color blind. And so
There's no such thing as not seeing color. That's bullcrap.
well,
I don't know.
there's such thing as wearing,
What you read
there is such thing as wearing blinders.
Right. It doesn't even make any sense.
There
So,
is such thing as wearing blinders. So what I try to tell our staff to do is look for people in the room that are not the usual suspects to go interview. Go interview the minorities, get their voice. They live in this neighborhood, get their voice in the story.
Wait, interview them
the things
too for stories that aren't just about certain issues too. Like how often do you have a feature story about like an interesting business owner who happens to be that?
No, that's what I was going to say. We do that. So and partly we don't cover crime. So we're not in that rabbit hole. Right? So whenever there's a positive story about a young African American
but it
achieving.
doesn't even have to be positive. It could be an issue that they are concerned about, an issue that this community is interested in, and there's no coverage of it in the mainstream news.
Right. Well, that's the kind of thing we would go to and cover.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the story. You have to be in the community before crisis breaks.
Yeah.
So that is another point I wanted to raise. But just even beyond talking, I mean, I want to get beyond talking about, yes, this is one way, this is one strategy that was slow down talking to people, which we know anyway. But you can still miss the nuance. You can still use language that isolates rather than engages. I'm just going to be honest. I bristled when I saw the term minority.
It sucks. It's just a terrible term.
We have to start using that word.
Especially by 2050, when it's going to be turned on its head.
Right, white people will be the minority. Will we use it then?
Yeah, exactly.
We have to come up with some different terminology. I didn't usually say people of color. I use those terms. I think I was talking to an editor last week, yellow name, and he said, "Oh yeah, I hire for personality fit." When you say personality and fit, a person of color hears you don't fit. We never fit in. So don't use that term. We never fit in. So, and when we hear it, even though you may not mean it, when we hear it, it strikes a chord internally that sends me the message you don't want to send. So there's certain types of language that we use, and we might should rethink. And you wouldn't know that unless you had that.
Are there other
Other
examples
person.
you can think of?
Oh gosh, you would ask me that. Recent examples.
Other examples.
That no angel thing, he didn't mean to be offensive, but it was.
Yeah.
Gosh, I can talk to you about coverage. Tamir Rice used to be, we held we were not gone, and I don't know what they did in terms of how they covered Tamir Rice shooting
The 12-year-old who was shot, right?
Right. How they focused on Tamir Rice's parents as criminals rather than what happened to Tamir Rice. Criminalized the boy by criminalized, talking about the criminal history of his parents, and then about the police officer. There you had not just language, but you had just, I don't know what they were thinking by
They do it
approaching the story.
when they refer to the Baltimore riots, they kind of put a thug.
Oh yeah.
But, and when they had the giant shooting in Texas at the bar with the bikers, they were,
Right,
all
were they
over
called
just-
thugs?
No,
Yeah, that's a good example.
There's a lot of second order indexing, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
These students,
Sorry, what they call it?
second order indexing, basically. It's a very academic term, but it's a way of referring to a group of people in a very subtle way that doesn't on its face sound bad unless you understand the context in which you use. They do it in sports a lot.
And you
So
don't
they'll
do
say,
it
oh, he's a
consistently.
class act,
Right.
right?
So with white
Or,
people,
oh,
you do it
the
this way, but with
Latino guy, that's
Latinos,
always a
with blacks,
firecracker,
you do it different,
right?
you use a different term.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Latinos are always considered
Firecracker, yeah. Oh, look at these, a
That
firecracker, yeah.
That kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, that
It's like a
kind of.
Mexican jumping me.
Yeah, no,
Right,
it's like
right,
that.
that kind
It's
of
really
language,
bad, yeah.
that kind of language that gets us into trouble a lot. You do not
Second order indexing.
think that it's offensive, but you perceive that way. And so those are the things. Another thing I would watch for, or try to use more inclusive language. I mean, some of this is unconscious bias. When you realize it. And so we have to. I'm trying to figure out how to address the whole unconscious bias issue, because a lot of journalists completely miss it, and then if it's called to their attention, they get offended by it.
Does anyone, Dorian Maynard used to come and follow language training with us and address each other that process. But that to me is just a long process.
Yeah.
You can't just like, so.
Well, it has to be like a regular thing, almost routinely questioned. This is where I think people of all colors, if they take ownership of this, like, I have a colleague here at the department, in my department, I'm very close to, who happens to be a black man. And he and I are both very cognizant of what happens when we both are offended by something when I say something versus when he says something. And I can think of scenarios where it's better for him to say it rather than me to say it like a crazy feminist woman, right? If he says something that's somehow different. So I think a lot of it is just us feeling, a part of a larger community and, pointing out things, whether, if it's me personally slighted because I happen to be of that race or ethnicity or gender or what have you. I think that's a long term.
Which brings up another point. What does diversity mean? Anybody, what does that mean?
That the world doesn't always look like me. And I think the reason why I use that is because that hits the gender, it hits the race, it hits the socioeconomic, it hits everything. Because that's the soul of diversity, is like all of those things create diversity. And we come from a monolithic media model of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We had a unified audience. We imagined our audience were all sitting down reading their newspaper first thing in the morning or whatever it was. So we have a special bias towards this monolith of the audience. And it takes longer for us that have been trained as journalists to sort of break that down and see all the discrete parts, which is one of the ways that the web has exploded our universe. Because it's all about the discrete parts.
What does diversity mean? What does that mean?
Obviously, everyone's number one major thing. You know, it's not saying, you know, an organization that is all low income or all Hispanic is no more diverse than one that's all white or all African. You have to give that to the
Anybody else?
Different histories.
I'm about to abolish that word, just like I've abolished minority. I'm about to abolish diversity. When you say diversity, people's eyes glaze over. They don't want to talk about it. And for whatever reason, especially when you said white men, they don't think they're included, even though they're diverse. So I'm trying to figure out how else to approach this. What other way to approach this?
So
So
if I can comment on that, and in the
As
same
a white man.
as a white man who grew up in a suburb, let me tell you about how I feel. Great. All my steam was gone. And I was relying on a joke. I just burst my bubble. What was I saying? Oh, so to point out the diversity thing, and also to talk about how journalists can't take racism in that regard, I think it's a lot about the sort of training and upbringing in the practice of journalism, right? Thankfully, I decided to minor in anthropology, cultural anthropology as an undergrad. So, right. Oh, my privilege, here it comes. So I think in that regard, when you talk about linguistic anthropology, you talk about indexing and you talk about the words you use. And I think people forget that simple words have a lot of context to people, like firecracker, right? Like these things that you might say in everyday discussion or have a newsroom that everyone says, oh, it's fine to you know, a good example is taking a picture of a young African American who is shot and taking the one where he's like in a basketball jersey as opposed to his high school photo and he's like dressed like a suit type of a thing. So I think because journalists aren't trained in that sense, they're trained in the idea that there is some sort of objectivity, the 50s, 60s, 70s idea that there's this all truth. That's why they get caught up in that, and so it's very interesting. I have a white friend who's in a PhD program at Mount Sinai University. Is the university at the hospital there in Manhattan, and I was like, you know, man, you have privilege. I just wanted to approach the conversation with him. And he was just so absolutely offended. And it's the first person I ever ran into because of the circles that I run in, right? The people I've talked to say, we would have a discussion about what does diversity mean. And for him, he's offended that someone could say that he didn't struggle, that he didn't have a hard time. But I think it's a question of spectrums, right? You have to understand there's a spectrum, and you have to understand there's something you sometimes can't do anything about certain things.
There's assumptions that he's going to be afforded when someone looks at him.
Right.
And, you know, midnight he's driving his car and he's pulled over. There's going to be a different assumption made about him than my nephew.
Right.
You know, versus this person over here. I mean, that's just. And I can't force people to own that, but you know, anyone who thinks that, you know, I'm treated the same way as an African American colleague who's been pulled over dozens of times and never ticketed. I mean, you know, there's something going on there.
Can I add to it? And I think I've been focusing a lot more on the concept of empathy and trying to listen which reporters or journalists who are good journalists actually listen a lot more than they pontificate. But to listen and try to see where another person might be coming from, or how they might be affected by something. And most recently, I saw a serious lack of empathy, not in something that was more traditionally associated with it, like Black Lives Matter, but in the whole conversation about Uber coming into communities, because young, more affluent, generally white folks were very anxious to be one of the hip, cool folks and have Uber in their community, and not at all aware of what was going to happen to people of color who exist in much more of a cash economy in other parts of town, and with a company that is just adamant about not being required to serve the entire community, like banks are required and stuff. So they can redline with abandon, they can price gouge with abandon, and they can absolutely insist that you have to have a smartphone to even flag them down. And so many young white folks who were looking to bring Uber into town were just oblivious to what it was going to do to people of color who were less fortunate. And bringing that up to folks really created a lot of hostility, because it was kind of suggesting they had no empathy.
That's really interesting.
Outside of their own life.
I always heard with Uber, the thing that I heard was cabbies can't drive by and not pick up like black people. You know, it's a lot harder for them because you can't see the person who's calling the Uber. So I never even heard that. I never even considered that. I get that you have to have a smartphone, and that's a socioeconomic barrier, that obviously. But I always heard that Uber was more inclusive because the Uber driver doesn't see the person before they accept the fare. That's really
many communities, and I'm speaking for large communities where I've been a journalist, because cab companies redlined areas of town.
Right, yeah.
The communities then required cab companies to prove that they served all parts of the community,
right, okay.
And they have to prove it, and that goes for ADA as well. And so Uber and Lyft came in and absolutely refused to play by those rules, and said that if you were, those rules didn't apply because they're technology.
Oh wow! That's crazy. I didn't realize that.
So the point is we're brought up. So,
Okay.
But my question is, how do we get more people in this room? And you're talking about maybe it has to do with how you talk about it, because you said there's over diversity and don't see it.
So next year at ONA, I plan on doing I'm planning on approaching this differently. There are several engagement panels, and I'm going to make sure that I or somebody we're sitting on one of those panels, so that we're talking to a more diverse audience. So one of the things that I have thought about after we had this long discussion about bringing in other voices, I may have to bring in another voice, and it will have to be white and male. We need a white man to convene other white men to talk about this issue. Wow.
That's great.
Sad but true.
Using your white privilege for good.
That's really important because you have to I have to see myself as part of this conversation,
Right.
instead of being, oh, it's all women and black people and Latinos and Asians who are accusing me of privilege. I work hard. Whereas if there's a face that you recognize,
They got Tim Wise in here.
yes.
See, I would get 10 Wise, but 10 Wise would go off and start cussing everybody out. So I got looking for my white male.
You know that there's a reluctance to do that, even from people who totally buy in, because like who might have,
Then we're mansplaining again.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a trap. The whole thing's a trap.
I only need the white male to convene.
The bait switch.
Yeah, we can take it from there.
I like that.
So, yeah.
Sweet.
Well, thank you.
Randy, conversation.
That was great. No, seriously, you get Tim Wise in here.
I know, that would be wild.
Yeah.
Probably working with